Hamden's Teacher of the Year from Hamden High School Science Department, Tracy Stockwell.
And he asked if I had a joke to start things off. I didn't then, but now I do. Let's see who read their science news this summer. A Higgs boson particle walks into a church. The preacher says, "We don't allow Higgs boson particles here." "You call yourself the God particle. That's sacrilegious." The Higgs boson particle said, "If you don't allow Higgs bosons, how do you have mass?" So congratulations if you understood that. You bring new meaning to the term one percenter. Those are butterflies in my stomach. Since I'm not that funny, I've sat in this room for the past 12 convocations, vowing that I would never be on this stage or standing up here doing what I'm about to do. Teaching in front of a room full of teenagers seems easy compared to this. I am humbled to be in the midst of so many of you whom I admire. Some of you have stood before me here in past years. Some of you have represented your schools as Teachers of the Year. Some of you have taught and inspired my own kids. And some of you have caused me to stop dead in my tracks as I walked past your open doors as you were teaching. To those of you at the high school who had anything to do with the initial nomination, and those of you on the selection committee, thank you for believing in me. Thanks also to Gary, Marie, Pat, and Scott for your support through letter writing, and to Mike Segula for your suggestions on making this speech less intimidating. Mike, you are a tough act to follow. This began at the biological station in Bermuda this past May when Pat Fischetti called all 19 kids out of their room late at night to give some phony reminders about the next day's trip. He then said, "While you're all here, I have some news. The Hamden High School announced its Teacher of the Year today, and that person happens to be with us here in Bermuda." So, of course, I began looking around the group to see who he could be talking about. He couldn't be referring to me because all I do is teach. So for those of you who don't know me, I teach 3 levels of biology, mainly freshmen, and a marine biology elective. My co-workers and I take the kids that many of you have prepared for us and get them to replace these words with some more scientific ones, hopefully, with the goal of getting them one step closer to this. It's a tall task. I honestly love teaching, though, and still manage to eat, breathe, and sleep it, always thinking about my next lesson, how best to teach it, and how to make it real for 100 or so students each day. This Teacher of the Year process has placed me outside of my comfort zone, my science classroom, into a strange and reflective place. I'm not the best teacher in my school. I'm not the best teacher in the district. And as I had to explain to freshmen last year about mermaids, there is no such thing. I really did. Even so, I've had no choice but to address head-on the question of what about my teaching may be noteworthy. Through a thesis-size application to the state that I had to write this summer, I've had to reflect on my past, my philosophy, my beliefs about issues in education, and my message to other teachers. I've come to see myself as a decorator crab of sorts. Someone who, over the years, has taken the best from various places and made it work for me. Throughout their lives in the ocean, these crabs stick bits and pieces from their surroundings onto their shells in order to camouflage and survive. I think many of us can relate. So, a bit about my teaching past. Help me out here. Those who can, do. Those those who can't teach. What a bunch of crap. The problem with quotes like this is that there are always people like me naive enough to listen, and I did. As the first and only person in my family to go to college, and a female science major on top of it, I intentionally ruled out teaching because I felt I had something to prove. No idea what. But I wasn't going to take the supposed easy way out. Who knew I would make a career at proving these words wrong? Fortunately, my jobs after graduating, first few jobs, including 5 years in zoo education in upstate New York, gave me opportunities to teach science to people of all ages. It was an amazing and unforgettable time. Upon moving to Connecticut, I eventually decided to follow my heart into the classroom, and I've never looked back. I think we all know that those who can teach and those who can't shouldn't. Yet, defining can in today's high-stakes climate has never been more important. Every student deserves no less than the most competent, passionate, and inspiring teachers in every course at every grade level. This word implies a solid knowledge of content, a deep understanding of kids and how they learn, unconditional respect for children and their families, a constant drive to improve, patience, open-mindedness, and an authentic passion that makes kids say, wow, this class always goes by so quickly. I thought I'd share with you what some of these things have come to mean with me. Starting with passion, it can be addictive. It's pretty hard for kids to tune out a teacher who seems to love what he or she is teaching. And to share with you the wisdom from my colleague Minta, sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. It works. My students actually seem to think that I am excited about everything that I teach. You really love this, Mrs. Stockwell. Truth is, I will never love teaching mitosis or the Connecticut Standard on Human Demographics. But that will remain my secret. I tell students to discover their passion and find a way to get paid for it. Most days, I feel lucky to have done just that, and I hope you feel the same. Some thoughts on content. When I finally started teaching 12 years ago, my attitude was, I'm going to teach these kids science and get them to love it if it's the last thing I do. I was obsessed, and more than a few balls fell to the ground. The truth is, while staying current on science issues is one of my favorite things to do, and I do it almost every night, teaching it may be the last thing I do. It didn't take long to learn that teaching is so much more than the content area written on our state certificate. Of course, most of us figure this out, but do we really accept it? Do we willingly embrace the realities of our children's lives, as disparate as they may be to our own, plan and teach accordingly, and go that extra mile for the many students and their families who need us to? It is a ton of work. Some days my objectives are related only to expected behaviors in my class, and the science content takes back burner. Even so, my goal from day one is to launch a year-long sales pitch about why science matters, and this requires creativity and flexibility. For all of us, successfully teaching our content to students who possess an incredibly diverse range of skills and behaviors is a daunting and demanding task. Successful teachers, by default, must be successful jugglers. Moving on. To all of you parents out there, raise your hand if you recognize this book. If you don't have kids, bear with me. What about this one? And this one? What about this one? Heidi Murkoff never wrote this. I've just designed a cover should she ever choose to. But it would be nice, wouldn't it? How many of us parents would have bought and read a book for each year of our child's development had one been available, or maybe just wished for a manual to guide us through adolescence and beyond? Obviously, many parents continue reading, and there are plenty of resources available, but there's no doubt that raising a teenager can make you feel like you're starting all over again. If you think about it, teaching is no different. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, you're assigned a new grade, a different level, or you have a particularly challenging mix of students and behaviors. Some of these may look familiar. But to stay on top of our game, how many of us keep learning about our true subjects, the ones who make us laugh, cry, cringe, and pull our hair out? I believe we need to know as much about children as we do about our content areas. I've often thought that if I could go back and take the courses in educational psychology and child development that were required before I ever stepped foot into a classroom, I would actually get something out of them now. I have to confess, I actually enjoy reading this stuff. In fact, here are 2 books that I read this summer. They really made me think, and I highly recommend them. My point is that we all need to remain open-minded and approach every school year as if we were beginners. After all, how many of us have become the teachers we want to be? Anyone? We need to let go of outdated attitudes and practices if they don't work for all kids, even if they may have worked for us back in the day. Henry Ford said, "Anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young." If he's right, let's get the most from retirement and all live to 100. Moving on some more. I believe that quality relationships between students and teachers are the keystone pieces to success, ours and theirs. Solid relationships almost guarantee that we aren't teaching in vain, while ineffective ones can undermine even the most expertly designed lesson. Listen with empathy, solve problems collaboratively, and give respect at all times. You'll usually get it back. Being a dominant presence in a classroom without having a we versus them attitude takes skill, but the payoffs are great, especially for students and their families who have a hard time with trust. And regarding families, they really do send you the best they've got. No one is keeping the good ones at home. I've heard this many times, at convocation probably, and I still need to hear it. It's so easy to think that parents should do this or that, and yes, they should. But nothing good comes from dwelling on it. Being a parent is tough. I've learned that forging relationships by picking up the phone early and often, ending each week by surprising a few parents with some good news, and always working to make the most challenging parents into allies goes a long way. I especially encourage all you new teachers to make the time to keep families in the loop. It is time well spent. Last year was a tough year to be a teacher in Connecticut. Hopefully, with the controversy surrounding Connecticut school reform behind us, we can move on from playing defense, as so many in this room did tirelessly last spring. One thing that struck me then was how much finger-pointing goes on in education. Teachers, students, parents, administrators, politicians, we are all scapegoats. Yet no group is being watched or blamed more than teachers. We know that accountability for learning occurs in our classrooms, but it is so easy to get frustrated if we are judged by our failures, held accountable for variables beyond our control, and feel as if other stakeholders are off the hook. Our challenges are real, yet by clinging to excuses and pointing fingers ourselves, we evade responsibility and do little to deflect attention away from test scores. The role of victim is unworthy of any of us. No doubt we will continue to live under the public microscope, so maybe it's time for us to take the upper hand. We can get better at tooting our own horns. For example, showing off the new curricula that we've all worked so hard on, how it's implemented and correlates with student achievement. Only in helping others understand the complexities embedded in this job and through our own proactive measures can we avoid being judged by numbers alone. Perception is reality. We have a major perception problem in education, and if we teachers don't work to change that perception for the better, no one is going to do it for us. As I've built my shell, I've learned about what it really means to teach from many places. Books and countless students aside, there are several people to whom I owe thanks. Starting with my earliest years, from my first science director, Paul Massey, who would observe me and then ask, "So, how do you know if they learned it?" A curveball question that left me fumbling for words. Or, "Did you notice the boy in the back row with his head down?" Guilty again, but I learned not to sacrifice students for content delivery. From my current science director, Pat Frischetti, I admired you first as the cool science teacher down the hall with a double life as a marine biologist. And I now look up to you as an amazing administrator. I am honored to be able to learn and grow under your direction. And really, because of your leadership, many of us in our department could be standing here right now. From my talented and hardworking science department, what a group. A special thanks to Dave Abate, who more than anyone else taught me early on what high standards really were, and that demanding nothing but the best from students could include refusing substandard work, a practice I now do regularly. I believe, Dave, you called it garbage. Bill, I remember observing you many years ago and being absolutely mesmerized by your calmness and patience and ability to explain anything. From the rest of my department, our time together, whether in working collaboratively or meeting informally, always leaves me with fresh perspectives and new ideas. You are an amazing group of coworkers. From my kids' teachers, through conversations with you and things I've learned at our dinner table, you've reinforced again and again the importance of patience, empathy, retakes, humor, fairness, and open lines of communication. The list of you is long, but you know who you are. You've all had your work cut out for you at one time or another, and it has never gone unappreciated. From my incredible team, Liz Marini, John Leone, Lisa Crandall, we rocked Team D last year, and the years before that. Our strength as a team lies in the diversity of our teaching styles, allowing us to continue learning from each other year after year. We count on each other to demand nothing but the best from our students, academically and behaviorally. I'm pretty sure they won't forget us, and I know they leave our team with tools that will continue to serve them well. From the talented support staff that our district hires, I am so grateful that our freshman team includes such knowledgeable and caring social workers and psychologists. From your expertise, I continue to learn even more about children and their complex, often frustrating behaviors. Saving the best for last, my family. Where do I start? Probably by thanking you for adapting to a lifetime of very late dinners and for putting up with school year Tracy until summer Tracy finally reappears. I appreciate your patience and all you have taught me. From my 3 kids, Lindsay, Alex, Brendan, I learned that it wasn't okay to hold higher standards for you than for my own students. You've all been my reality check. I learned that being a teacher is no guarantee that school will come easily for his or her own kids. Through your struggles and triumphs, I have gained invaluable insights into teenage minds. You have all taught me that it really does take patience and repetition to raise a child, and my students will forever benefit from this attitude. Teaching in the same building as you for what will now be 8 years has been such a privilege, and I will forever miss these days when Alex and Brendan graduate in June. From my parents who live out of state but are with me in spirit today, I've learned what it means to let a child follow her heart and spread her wings, even if she says, I'm going to major in zoology, and I have no idea where it will take me. Finally, from my husband, Jeff, I've learned the true meaning of love and support. You've been with me every step of the way, and without that, I would not be standing here, nor would I be leaving this room shortly to begin my 13th year. Jeff, I went back and forth about whether or not to repeat your infamous quote from 10 years ago. But the truth is, it speaks volumes about the hard work that we do behind the scenes. You see, in my 3rd year of teaching, as I was sitting up alone past midnight in the kitchen working away, Jeff came downstairs, clearly flummoxed as to how it could possibly take so long to prepare a lesson that I had no doubt taught before. He asked, why can't you just be a mediocre teacher? I have no idea how I guiltily attempted to defend myself that night, but suffice it to say, he hasn't asked that again. And my nights up past midnight have significantly dropped. In closing, I'm still not the teacher I want to be. So like this crab, I continue to add new pieces of stuff to my shell. Some will stick, and some will fall off and be replaced. I hope the same for all of you. And like crabs avoid light, let's all try to avoid the negativity that will eventually rear its ugly head. We have too much work to do. In other words, we need to see glasses half full, unless, of course, we're at happy hour. So, on that note, here's to an amazing, inspiring, passion-filled year with all of your new students. Cheers, welcome back, and good luck to each and every one of you.